Have you ever felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken secrets pressing down on your chest, as if the very air around you was thick with the whispers of the past? I stood on the cracked pavement of Rua dos Lázaros, an unassuming street nestled in the heart of São Paulo, where the shadows seemed to stretch longer than the daylight allowed. The city, with its vibrant pulse, felt strangely hollow to me, as if the laughter and chatter of its inhabitants masked something darker lurking just beneath the surface. My name is Matheus, a name that echoes through the alleys of my childhood, with memories both cherished and cursed. Growing up in the quaint neighborhood of Vila Madalena, I was no stranger to the tales spun by the elderly at dusk, stories of spirits that roamed the narrow streets and rituals carried out under the watchful eyes of the moon. As a child, I'd listened with wide eyes, captivated by the mystery woven into the very fabric of our lives. But those stories were just that, stories, right? Until the night everything changed. It started with a flicker of light, a strange glow emanating from the derelict building at the end of the street. They used to call it the old Rios estate, a once grand manor now shrouded in decay and the scent of damp earth. My heart raced as I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, a combination of fear and fascination. The locals, their faces etched with caution, whispered of strange occurrences and figures seen in the windows after dark. They warned me to stay away, but curiosity has a way of drowning out reason. As I approached the crumbling facade, I recalled tales of my grandmother, who once told me of the cult that had thrived in the shadows of our city, a group that had sought to commune with forces beyond our understanding. They practiced their rituals in the very halls I now stood before, and even as a child, I could sense the chill that accompanied those stories. What had they summoned? What had they unleashed? The air was thick with anticipation, almost electric, as I stepped closer. A sudden gust of wind swept through the alley, carrying with it a whisper, a name, a plea. My heart thundered in my chest, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. The world around me blurred, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure, standing at the window, shrouded in shadow just beyond my reach. I turned back, my instincts screaming at me to flee, but the pull of the unknown was stronger than my fear. Memories of my past flooded my mind. My brother's disappearance a decade ago, the cold case that haunted our family like a specter. I had always believed the police had let us down, that they hadn't done enough to find him. But what if the answers lay within those walls, buried in the darkness that had claimed so many before? But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. The night air hung heavy with unspoken tension as I stood before the old Rios estate, a relic of a bygone era. The flickering light that had drawn me here pulsed with a life of its own, illuminating the broken glass and crumbling stone. I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat as the chill of the evening seeped into my bones. Was I truly prepared to confront whatever lay within those walls? Just then, a rustle behind me snapped my attention. I turned sharply to find a figure emerging from the shadows, Nina, a girl from my neighborhood. Her presence was unexpected, but she had an air of determination about her that both intrigued and unsettled me. "Matheus," she called out, her voice steady despite the darkness surrounding us. "I knew you'd come. I felt it." "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to mask my surprise. Nina had always been the daring one, the girl who dove into adventures with a reckless abandon I envied. But this was different. This was dangerous. "I've been watching this place," she admitted, her eyes reflecting the flickering light. "I think it's connected to the stories we heard as kids. Your brother's disappearance, the cult. We need to find out what really happened." My heart raced at the mention of my brother, the ache of loss still fresh, even after all these years. "You can't be serious. We shouldn't be here. We don't know what we're dealing with." "Exactly. That's why we need to go inside. We can't let fear control us," she insisted, her conviction igniting a spark of courage. Within me, before I could respond, she grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the entrance. The door creaked ominously as we pushed it open, and the air inside felt different, charged, almost sentient. Dust motes danced in the dim light, swirling like spirits, caught in a forgotten waltz. As we stepped further inside, I felt it, the weight of history pressing down on me thick and suffocating. The walls, lined with faded portraits of people whose eyes seemed to follow us, held stories of their own, stories of joy and despair, of life and death. "Matheus," Nina whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Do you feel that?" I nodded, my skin prickling. The atmosphere was thick with something unnameable. I'd expected an eerie quiet, but instead I heard faint murmurs, like echoes of conversations long past. I strained to listen, but the words slipped away, teasing my curiosity. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the hall. We both jumped, hearts racing. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't know, but we should check it out," Nina said, her eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and excitement. We crept toward the sound, the floorboards groaning beneath our weight. As we rounded a corner, we stumbled upon a room that looked as if it had been untouched for decades. In the center stood an ornate table covered in dust and strewn with remnants of what looked like ritualistic items, candles, strange symbols, etched into the wood, and a tattered book that lay open as if waiting for someone to return. Nina stepped closer, her fingers hovering over the pages. "This is it. This is what they used. We need to understand what it says." But as she leaned in, I felt a sudden coldness wash over me, a sense of foreboding. "Nina, wait!" I shouted. But it was too late. She had already touched the book. And in that instant, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest, and I felt a presence behind me, a breath on my neck, a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. Panic surged through me, and I grabbed Nina's arm, pulling her back. "Let's get out of here," I urged, but she was frozen, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "Matheus, what if this is connected to the answers we've been searching for? What if we're meant to uncover this mystery?" Her words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea, as the darkness closed in around us. I realized then that I wasn't just battling the shadows of the estate. I was wrestling with my own demons, the fear of losing myself in the quest for answers, and the haunting memories of a brother who had become a ghost in his own right. With the walls closing in, I knew I had to make a choice. Turn back and let the past remain buried, or plunge deeper into the unknown, risking everything to find the truth. I felt the weight of the darkness pressing down on us, and my mind raced with thoughts of what could emerge from it. The whispers swirled around my ears, a cacophony of voices that seemed to echo my own fears. I glanced at Nina, her expression a mix of awe and terror, and I wondered if she was beginning to understand the depth of what we had stumbled into. But before I could voice my concerns, a sudden flash of light illuminated the room, casting sharp shadows that danced across the walls. I squinted, trying to make sense of the chaotic scene. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the corner, half hidden in the gloom. I blinked, and as the light flickered again, it vanished. My heart raced. Had I really seen someone? Or was it just my mind playing tricks on me? "Nina," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did you see that?" "See what?" she asked, still transfixed by the book. She didn't even look up. I swallowed hard, trying to shake off the creeping dread. "I think someone's here with us." Just as I was about to suggest we leave, a loud thud echoed from above us, shaking the very foundations of the house. The noise was followed by a low, rumbling growl that reverberated through the air, sending chills racing down my spine. "We need to go now," I urged, pulling her away from the table. But Nina shook her head, a fierce light igniting in her eyes. "No, this is our chance, Matthias. We need to figure out what's going on. What if this is connected to your brother?" Her words pierced through me like a knife. The mention of my brother sent a flood of memories crashing over me. His laughter, the way he used to tease me, and the day he disappeared without a trace. I had spent years burying the pain, convinced that I could move on if I simply ignored it. But here, in this cursed house, it felt as if those memories had awakened, clawing their way to the surface. "Do you really think this is all just a coincidence?" she pressed, her voice urgent. "You said yourself that the cult was involved in his disappearance. What if they're still here, still trying to—" A sudden gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind us. My heart raced, and a sense of panic began to claw at my insides. The darkness felt alive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Matthias, listen!" Nina's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "What if it's not just a cult? What if your brother— what if he's still here, trapped in this place?" I shook my head, trying to dispel the notion, but the idea lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I felt myself teetering on the edge of madness. Was I truly losing my grip on reality? Or had I stumbled into something so profound that it defied explanation? And then I remembered the stories my parents told me. How my brother had been obsessed with the occult before he disappeared. How he had often spoken of a hidden truth that lay beneath the surface of our world. My chest tightened, and I realized that I might not just be confronting the shadows of the estate. I was facing the shadows of my own past. "Nina, we need to leave," I said again, my voice trembling. But as I turned to pull her away, I caught a glimpse of her expression, one of resolve mixed with something darker. It was as if she had tapped into a well of knowledge I had never seen before. "I'm not leaving without answers," she said. And in that moment I understood that this wasn't just about my brother anymore. It was about her too, her own, hidden motives, the secrets she had kept locked away. Before I could question her further, the ground beneath us trembled, and a deafening crack echoed through the estate. I felt a rush of air as the walls shuddered and the floor began to split apart. As I reached for her, I realized that the true danger lay not just within the estate, but within the very heart of our shared pasts. Dark, tangled, and waiting to be uncovered. "Together?" I asked, my voice barely rising above the noise. "Together," Nina confirmed, and as the floor gave way beneath us, we plunged into the unknown, each of us carrying the weight of our hidden truths into the darkness. As we fell through the darkness, time seemed to stretch, each second a lifetime of uncertainty. The air rushed past me like a torrent, and I gripped Nina's hand tightly, our fingers intertwined, a lifeline in the chaos. The ground finally met us with a bone-jarring thud, and I rolled to the side, gasping for breath. The dim light of flickering candles revealed our surroundings, a cavernous chamber, its walls lined with ancient symbols and grotesque carvings that seemed to writhe in the shadows. "Nina, are you okay?" I managed to say, my voice hoarse and shaky. She nodded, but I could see the fear etched across her face, mingling with exhilaration. "Look!" she pointed, and I followed her gaze to the center of the room, where a circular altar stood shrouded in an eerie glow. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and I could feel its pull, a dark allure that beckoned me closer. "This has to be where they performed the rituals," I whispered, my heart racing as memories of the cult flooded my mind. "This is where they took your brother," Nina finished for me, her tone grave. I could see the realization dawning in her eyes, but it was overshadowed by something else, something darker. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The whispers that had haunted us before intensified, coalescing into a single voice, a deep, resonant sound that echoed around the chamber. "You dare to intrude?" it boomed, sending chills racing down my spine. The shadows coalesced, and I felt a presence materializing before us, a figure cloaked in darkness, its features obscured. "Nina, we need to get out of here!" I shouted, instinctively backing away. But she stood her ground, staring into the face of the unknown with a mix of defiance and curiosity. "Wait, what if this is our chance to find out the truth?" She stepped forward, emboldened by the light emanating from the altar. "What if we can communicate with him?" "No!" I grabbed her arm, panic surging through me. "This isn't a game. We don't know what we're dealing with." But before I could pull her back, the figure lunged forward, and the air crackled with energy. I felt my heart race as the shadows twisted around us, and I could see glimpses of my brother's face, haunted, desperate. "Help me!" he cried, his voice laced with anguish. "Matheus!" Nina shouted, her eyes wide with horror. "He's trapped!" In that moment, I understood the weight of our choices. This wasn't just about confronting the darkness of the estate. It was about confronting the darkness within ourselves. I felt the stirrings of my own pain, my own guilt. "We can't leave him!" I yelled, stepping toward the altar, drawn by an unseen force. "Nina, we have to do this together," I urged, locking eyes with her. The struggle between the desire to save my brother and the fear of what lay ahead was palpable. The figure loomed closer, its presence pressing against us like a storm. "Together," Nina agreed, her voice steady. In that moment, everything hinged on our next move. We had to confront the truth, to face the entity that held my brother captive, and to wrestle with our own fears. As we stepped forward, the chamber vibrated with energy, and I knew we were on the brink of something that would change us forever. The whispers crescendoed, the shadows surged, and the altar flared brighter, illuminating the darkness around us. I could feel the weight of our pasts pressing down, and I braced myself for the storm that was about to break. As we stepped closer to the altar, the energy enveloped us, a tangible force that pulled at my very essence. The entity loomed, its form shifting and swirling, a nightmare made manifest. I could hear my brother's voice echoing in my mind, a desperate plea that ignited a fire within me. "Help me!" he called again, and I felt the weight of his anguish pressing down on my chest. With every inch we took toward the altar, the whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices that clawed at my sanity. I squeezed Nina's hand tighter, our resolve, tethering us together as we faced the unknown. "We're here, Matheus!" I shouted, my voice breaking through the chaos. "We're coming for you!" The shadows writhed around us, and the figure surged forward, its presence crushing. I could feel the darkness attempting to invade my mind, but I fought back, recalling every moment of my brother's laughter, every memory of our childhood. "You're not taking him!" I yelled defiantly. Suddenly, the altar erupted with blinding light, and I was thrust backward, tumbling to the ground. The air crackled, and I felt a sharp pain slice through my side as I hit the stone floor. I gasped, the pain grounding me in the present, reminding me that I was still alive, still fighting. Nina cried out beside me, her face pale as she staggered, back, clutching her arm where shadows had clawed at her skin, leaving dark, angry marks. In that moment of chaos, a surge of energy erupted from the altar, and I felt a pull unlike anything before. The shadowy figure screamed, a sound that resonated deep within my bones. And then, silence. The chamber exploded with light, and I shielded my eyes, feeling an overwhelming force wash over me. When I dared to look again, the figure was gone, leaving behind only a faint echo of its dark presence. The altar flickered, its glow dimming, but Matheus was free. He materialized before us, disheveled and trembling, his eyes wide with terror and relief. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered, collapsing into my arms. but the victory was bittersweet. I could see the shadows lingering at the edges of the chamber, still alive and restless. They were not gone. They were merely waiting. As I held my brother close, I felt the scars from our confrontation, the physical pain in my side, and the emotional weight of everything we had just faced. Nina's breath came in ragged gasps, and I glanced at her arm, where the marks from the shadows were still visible. "Are you hurt?" I asked, my heart sinking at the sight of her pain. She nodded, a flicker of fear in her eyes, and I realized that none of us would walk away unscathed. "What now?" Matheus asked, glancing around. The chamber, uncertainty clouding his features. I took a deep breath, but the answer eluded me. I felt the pull of the altar's energy, still thrumming beneath my fingertips, an invitation to delve deeper into the mysteries we had yet to uncover. "We need to get out of here," I replied. But a part of me knew that this was far from over. As we made our way toward the exit, I cast one last look back at the altar. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse, whispering secrets I couldn't quite grasp. There were still unanswered questions, and I could sense that the darkness was far from defeated. Nina and Matheus flanked me, but I felt the weight of the shadows following us, an unshakable presence that whispered of more to come. We had survived this confrontation, but our journey was only beginning. As we stepped into the light of the world outside, I knew that whatever lay ahead would challenge us in ways we couldn't yet comprehend. The scars we bore would serve as constant reminders of the darkness we had faced, but they would also fuel our quest for the truth, and I was ready to face it, together. As we stepped into the blinding light of the outside world, a sense of relief washed over me. But that relief was fleeting. The shadows that had clung to us in the chamber now danced at the periphery of my vision, a constant reminder of the darkness that still lurked in our lives. I glanced at Matheus, his face pale and drawn, and at Nina, who winced as she adjusted her grip on her injured arm. We had escaped, but the weight of our encounter clung to us like a shroud. Yet, as we turned to leave, I felt it, a chilling whisper brushing against my ear, echoing the voice of the entity we had faced. "You cannot escape," it taunted, a sinister promise that sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, my heart racing, and the world around me dimmed, as if the sun itself recoiled from the threat that still lingered. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. But before either could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, and the shadows coiled tighter, wrapping around our feet like serpents. I struggled against them, but they pulled me backward, away from the light, back toward the altar, back into the abyss. "No!" I screamed, reaching for my brother and Nina, but they were engulfed in darkness, their faces twisting with terror. The shadows rose higher, consuming everything, and I was left alone, surrounded by an all-encompassing void. The last thing I heard was Matheus's desperate cry, fading into the abyss as the darkness swallowed my world, leaving me paralyzed and powerless, a prisoner of my own fears, forever trapped in a nightmare made real. And then, silence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.